here again, the attunement and the mana bubble thing going on. And it's also from Kudos Productions again. And here's another great little character design. This guy is cool. Like, this is a little manta ray bastard of some kind. That's a really nice way to do that. Almost like he's wearing a hat. Like a long flowing cape that comes out of a hat that he's wearing on his head. That's really cute. And that's really cool, too. Nicely done. So, framing. Here, the entire environment is kind of working together to frame the character. You have this arc of foreground objects that kind of block out, like, a good third to... yeah, a little over a quarter, perhaps, of the image itself. It's just kind of dedicated to foreground objects, and then that creates this little well that he snugly fits into with, like, the curve of his little manta ray wings going on up here, which, like, creates a really nice composition. Like, this feels like a really well-composed image because, like, this flows together so naturally with the environment. And then again, bright light being used to highlight him. This bright light of the mana bubble that he's attracted to, also helping to draw our eyes to him because we see his eye line going to it. I like the use of green and pink. Like that's a really nice contrast to have on this character. Like, it would have been so easy to go with green and then light blue to kind of go with the lightning magic that he's got going on, but like the green and pink really gives him that ocean creature vibe to him, I think, and almost frog-like feet too. Cool. That's a very cool little character design. And then there's this guy, like, I'm just looking for my date. I met you on Tinder. You swiped right, and everybody's just like, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me. Oh, poor deep sea creatures. They're always so ugly. Also, this thing is infected by the void. Oh, was this a she? Sap once completed the Assure Way circuit in just under 3 minutes. She even had to dodge the Little Jaws shattered hull near the end. Oh, cool. That's a female character. Even better. I like it when female characters aren't like they aren't wearing like makeup or super obviously designed to look stereotypically feminine. That's good. I didn't even notice that. Good catch, chat. Anyway, this guy's void infected, hence the giant gaping eye on the front and the purple coloring. And again, you can see the same framing techniques being used here, like with the arc of the undersea cave thing, framing the character themselves, and he's highlighted. It is highlighted with bright light that kind of frames its face right there, while everything else is relatively more in shadow. Interestingly, though, outside of his eye, like, there's plenty of bright colors on the fish around it, but those colors are slightly muted in order to ensure that nothing takes away from the primacy of this ugly-ass looking little bastard. Like, my god. But yeah, many of the same techniques that we've talked about before, so there probably isn't that much to add. So here, the hunting fleet. This is the counterpart, as we can see, to the narwhal. Like, they spawn a narwhal for your opponent also, once they go. And you can see the composition, same arrangement of ships, the whale underneath, and here you can see the whale down there and the ships above, which is a lovely little continuity. Like, again, something that I really like about Legends of Runeterra is the storytelling in the art of the cards. Like stuff like Cythria, where you see her arrive in Demacia as an early recruit, then you see her being like a rank-and-file soldier, and then you see her as Cythria the Bold when she, like, comes into her own as a Demacian leader in her final version of the card. I like the continuity that exists between different cards here. So, the ships are obviously the main subject of this picture. Like, the whale is glowing, and you can see it down there, but it's also blurred out by the water and isn't really the focus of the image. The focus is the vanishing point movement of these ships. You can see they all move in the same direction, but you have this really strong perspective. So if you drew a line through, like, the center of each ship, you would get a vanishing point that is somewhere, like, way out in this direction right here, which creates a really strong perspective and gives that really strong sense of speed of these ships, like, cutting through the water, chasing down their prey, moving really fast. which is also helped by the design of the sails here. Like you can see all those lines as though the sails are pulled completely taut, like really being pushed by the wind forward. This is a high-speed chase that's going on. In terms of color contrast, you have like the static greenish blue of the waters underneath, and then you have the torches on the boats themselves, creating these little orange highlights that makes each ship an object of interest, besides just the contrast between the brownish color of the ship and the dark green-blue of the water. Then you also have these little points of light that draw your attention to the ships themselves, which is well done. And I like the use of mist here. Like, first of all, the mist is really, it gives a really nice atmosphere to the chase, to the whole scene, but also it helps avoid, because you can see there's more ships hiding in the background here, but it also avoids having a background that's too detailed, taking away from the interest points of like the 5-6 ships that we've got in the foreground here. So like that's a nice use of the mist to manage the detail. Need to blow my nose again. Again, like, seriously, if you had these fish people everywhere anyway, why is the card shark not a fish person? Though, I mean, come on. So, the RAZORSCALE Hunter is some kind of Cthulhu-ass looking deep-sea motherfucker of some kind. I don't think he's a Vestaya necessarily. He could be. He could be a Vestaya sort of out of the same vein as Nami, but more of a, like a squid or octopus person than a fish person, something along those lines. I'm not sure where he fits into the taxonomy of League of Legends, but the framing here is cool as hell, because he's framed by his prey. He's framed by the giant coiling tentacle of whatever enormous octopus creature he has decided to take on. And like, talk about a cool way to frame a hunter, by having him framed with the limbs of his prey. That is really fucking badass to me. A male of Nami species? No, I don't think so. I don't think he's a Mirai. Because the Mirai specifically are fish people. We've seen a male of Nami species before in one of the comics for her, and he looked a lot more like a merman rather than this tentacled octopus man nonsense thing going on. Anyway, I like the wound. Like, he's clearly been wounded by something or other, and you see this glowing magic light glowing through. That's a really cool little detail. Like, I'm not sure how it ties into, like, is his blood just that color, or is he just glowing with magic inside? I think it's probably the same color here as comes out of his eyes, but his eyes are so narrow that you kind of can't tell. So I don't know about that. It's a cool detail. It just doesn't add much except a point of visual interest. Like, it's this really strong visual color contrast with the rest of the image, but because the storytelling isn't 100% clear to me, I'm not sure what to make of it. Anyway, again, with the very, very thin waist, that maybe could use a little bit more space for muscle, especially on something that swims so much. Like, have you seen swimmers? They've got abs for days. But outside of that, I really like the pose. I like the confident, like, I'm rearing back to throw my spear with the arm out for balance in the front, and then this confident look over the shoulder as he's twisting into the lunge that he needs to launch the spear at whatever the hell it is he's hunting rather. Oh, they're gills! Oh, that makes way more sense. Bubbles come from it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, gills. That makes way more sense. That's cool, then. That's cool. Gills and kills. But yeah, lovely composition, like that right there, the framing with the octopus. That is just so badass to me. And you can also see lots of motion blur has been applied to the octopus tentacle itself to really imply that it's like swooping right past him, like he's just dodged it and then it's swooping past him and trying to coil back and catch him, but now he's getting ready to throw his spear, like we're in the middle of a combat scene with him. And here again, Kudos Productions, and you can tell instantly from the visual style that it's another Kudos production picture. The little turtle boy is back, and he's got a horn now that he's blowing stuff into, and he's riding whatever the hell this is, this adorable fish, axolotl lizard thing looking... What the hell is that? It looks amphibian, much more than fishy, but it's also cute. Oh, that's adorable. So, framing again, right here, all of the, like, the little corals and the cliff or whatever this is, and the bright light coming from above, all of that creates a frame here for the main character, who is the sea turtle boy, and his giant animal friend to inhabit, drawing your attention to this part of the space. And then there's the color contrast with the bright red of this amphibian thing-looking creature, drawing your attention to the center of the image. Many of the same techniques we talked about before. Plus, they're adorable. Look at them. Look how cute that is. Again, we're doing a Dutch angle, and here, again, I'm really not sure why. Like, it works, but it's just... Well, it's not... Yeah, it's a Dutch angle, but it's not that strong. Like, you can tell that the horizon line is like this. But I guess it's fine. And here we have the Citrus Courier. A lot of people's new husband, going by what I saw on Twitter when his card art was revealed, whom we saw previously as a member, of course, of Gangplank's crew, because where else would a Citrus Courier have a home? And here again, some of the same composition we've seen already. Like, you have the sails and the ship itself creating this little bubble of space for him to stand up into and dominate that space. And then you have the outstretched hand, and I'm a little sad that we don't focus more on the outstretched hand with the oranges in the card art, but that would be impossible to do within the form factor. Holding out these sumptuous looking... Like, these oranges look delicious, don't they? Don't they just look like... Maybe you should peel them first, but if you ate them... Oh, man. Like, they'd be sweet and like, really, like, full of juice, and oh, they look good. And that's all down to just the quality of the painting that goes on these things. Again, that shining bright orange being used to draw your attention, and just so that you don't get too fixated on the juicy oranges that he's offering you, more juicy oranges up here to draw your attention back up here a little bit to take a look at the character himself, who's also, again, sunlight highlighting the character, making him brighter than a lot of the surrounding environment, etc., etc. Oh yeah, the furries love this man. The furries are very happy they've got a new daddy to worship. I like that he's got golden rings. Like, I like that there's that little sign of wealth on him, and also in his beard, like the little fish hooks that he's got in his beard hair. I think that's pretty cool. That you get this sense that, yeah, he's a Citrus Courier, but he's also kind of important to Gangplank's crew, so he makes good money doing what he does. And here's another lovely little detail. You see how on his overalls there, like, see how they're straining. Like, the gut, like, there's this sheer life force of this man, like, the vitality of him, the size, the gut of him, is almost bursting out of his own overalls. You can see how the stitching is kind of straining to contain him, which, again, is the kind of thing that you can use to create a character who looks, like, gross and bloated. But here, it doesn't make him look bloated. Here, it makes him look like, wow, there's a lot in there. Like, there's a lot of power and muscle combined with, like, the big muscly arms. That gives you much more of a sense of a powerful character rather than someone who is, like, indolent or flabby, which works really well. Like, that's the advantage of having the leather stretched out over it, is that you get this sense of tension and force that's being constrained, like power, like force that's being constrained rather than like stuff that's being contained from spilling out. Here we have another picture I don't like because, no, I don't like the ocean anymore, mommy. I want to go home. Because goddamn. Again, this is Kudos Productions. You can kind of see it in their color choices, but oh boy. Oh boy. No, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Again, scale, one tiny little human person. Just itty bitty tiny little, and then large boy with big mouth, ready to devour. And again, I'm not sure if this guy is supposed to be void-infested particularly, but I hate that we have the worst deep-sea creature, which is the anglerfish with its giant hook teeth, and then it has octopus tentacles as well. No! No, you can't have both! You only get to have one thing! You can't have both of them! Ah! God, this thing is scary. Again, a light source literally being used to highlight the creature itself. Little bit of framing going on with like the stalactites and stalagmites of this underwater cave, and then this creature's like 90% mouth. Just, oh boy. Oh, I don't want to look at that anymore. Obliterate an enemy with less health than me. How much health does it have? Okay, only 4. But it's deep. Oh, God. And another case of I don't have enough waste for internal organs. Like I said, it's 6 more vodka. It's like endemic with them. They keep doing it over and over and over again. And I think there's a chance, by the way, that Sheriff Lariat Rose here, with the white cloak, might be the person that the Yordle Grifter is trying to convince here. Because you can see the boots with the heels, and then the white cloak hanging off the side. It might be that she, the person that he's trying to convince not to take him in, is Lariat Rose here. I like the design of her fish horse thing. It's a seahorse. A literal seahorse. That's a very cool character, but my god, lady, you can't possibly, like, you don't even have a diaphragm to breathe with. What the hell? Anyway, much of the same stuff we've talked about already. Interestingly, the framing here, like you see there's an obvious frame with the arc of the bridge here, and then the street and stuff like that, but it's not being used to frame her as such. She's not framed by it, she's breaking out of it, like she's literally escaping from it. It's being used to frame her prisoner, so that he becomes highlighted a little bit as well, so that we remember to look at him, and of course also the rope will lead our eye to him. But, the character herself is much more highlighted by the bright white cloak that she's wearing where the sunlight is coming down on it, which makes her so much brighter right here than everything else that surrounds her. The horse, the people on the bridge, everything. And then the horse has the color, like the horse has that bright, or not bright, saturated is the word I'm looking for, has that highly saturated color that stands out from the rest of the environment where everything is like brown and a little bit reddish. And then here we have this purple, deep, hyper-saturated thing that really draws our eye in, which creates a nice contrast with the rider as well for visual interest. Here we have another bad picture that I don't like. No. That's too big. That's too much. And, oh, God, okay. So, do you know the worst thing about this creature? Do you know the absolute worst thing about it? The thing I hate the most? The thing I don't like? The thing that shouldn't be there? All of that. All of that? That's teeth. It can open its mouth that wide. Ah! The mouth goes all the way down here. Why? Why is that there? No, I don't like that. That's too much mouth! No! Oh, God. I hate the sea so much. Anyway, that's the worst thing about it. Lots of good stuff going on here in terms of composition. I don't think this is the same fleet of ships that was hunting down the Golden Narwhal, necessarily. It's probably another one. But, again, with, like, you have this... The light itself up here creates this spot, this point of interest that draws your eye there first because it's the brightest thing in the image. And then that leads you to looking at the head and the mouth of the creature itself and its prey so that you're instantly informed about it. But even if you don't draw your eye here immediately, the body of the creature dominates so much of the picture that the swoop of its body will still lead you up here where the light is being used to frame the creature against the prey that it's about to devour in a terrible fashion. And then you get the scale, which is provided by the ships and the fish and the sharks swimming around down here, showing you just how too big this thing is. Because it's too big. It's way too big. Things shouldn't be that big. I don't like it. And then we have the vicious plateworm, which is summoned with the plateworm egg, which you can get from this thing when you summon it. And this is also, again, scale, because that's a hammerhead shark And that's a large boy. Oh, that's a large boy. That's a lot of boy. That's a big boy. And here the composition, I think, is really, really cool, because the whole composition of this image revolves around this glowing light tower thing. You can see that all the fish, all the sharks, everything seems to be kind of circling it. And circling it more than anything else is the giant swooping tail of this enormous, long, lanky, predatory body. Like, encircling the whole of the thing. So you have this point, again, of visual interest with the light drawing your eye here, and then you have the swoop of this thing encircling it all. Which I think is a really cool way to compose an image like this and to really make it look... Like, first of all, help the scale, like, make this thing look big, but also just to help, like, emphasize the visual idea that this thing controls this part of the sea. Like, this is its territory. This is where it lives. This is where it encircles the world and devours what it wishes. It is the apex predator of this moment. Yeah, mom protecting its egg. That's probably true. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right, because that's what that is. It's a plate worm egg. Ah, good catch. Where were we? Right, the Smooth Soloist. This is another artist, Chin Liqui, which I hope I'm pronouncing Liqui, something like that. Who, again, I don't know if they're a freelancer or a rioter specifically, but they're also one of the artists who's been working on this. And here you can see, again, a very different aesthetic for faces than we have with a lot of the other characters. Like, the rendering of the scene is mostly the same style, but faces especially is where you can really tell the difference between various character artists. Now, this is a really cool character. Like, I like that there's a Vastaya in Bilgewater who's just stealing from everyone. And again, the same techniques are being used. Here, the character is framed in an interesting way. Like, lots of times we've talked about characters who are framed by, like, arches and, like natural frames in the environment that frame them, like, that become frames around them. Here, we're doing something different. The character is framed not by an arch, but by a pillar that becomes this, like, this vertical slot in the environment that creates a space for the character to occupy that serves two purposes. First of all, it does the framing job of, like, giving you a frame for the character to be in to draw your eye. It also tells us why these people can't see her. It's because she's hiding behind the pillar. Now, with all this flapping fabric and her long tail and the long flowy hair, I feel like it should probably be kind of easy to spot her standing there holding her gold out in her hands while it's tingling to the floor. But in terms of the visual storytelling, you kind of get that, oh, she's hiding behind the pillar, that's why they can't see her. Even if logically it doesn't make sense, emotionally, it still makes sense. But yeah, like, cool character. Kind of generic beauty, which bores me a little bit, but I know that's just me. But, like, I like the purplish hue, like the sort of whitish, purplish hue of her skin and her fur and her hair, contrasted against that bright red coat that she's wearing, or whatever the heck that is, tunic? Yeah, something along those lines. And then the other thing that's being highlighted, other than the character, is the gold that she's stolen. Like, it's literally got these little glowy lens flares going on the gold just to highlight even more that that's what she's been doing. She's been stealing from everybody. And I do like the smugness of her look. Like, it's just like, yeah, too easy. Like, that easy confidence that she's got going on. That builds the character out quite nicely. And she has a waist. Like, it's not a lot, but she has more than Misfortune. So that's something. Also, reduce the cost of allies in your hand and deck by 2? Motherfucker. If that wasn't a 7 cost, it would be so broken. It might still be broken. So here we have Misfortune's ship, the SYREN, with a Y to make it cool. And there's a couple of interesting things going on here. First of all, unlike Gangplank's ship, where he flies black sails, as we know, Misfortune has these bright white, almost pink sails. You can see there's a little bit of pink shading on them. And that's, like, that alone kind of helps the ship stand out brilliantly against the backdrop of the rest of the image, just because they're so bright. But also because they have this red tint to them. Like, they're not super pink, but they have this slight red tinting to them that makes them stand out even more against the blue sky and the general bluish aesthetic of the rest of the environment. Which is just like a clever little way to do it, to make the sails look white but still have like a color contrast with the rest of the environment. And I love this detail, like that when her cannons fire, they create a smoke ring that's shaped like a heart. That's so fucking extra. Lesbian ship, yes! Holy shit, yes! That is the most lesbian ship, holy fuck. And I believe the Yordle who's sitting on the cannon over here is the Crackshot Corsair. And the reason I think so is because of the hair. You can see it here. She's got those long dread ponytail things going on as well. So I'm reasonably sure that's the Crackshot Corsair sitting on the cannon there in the background. SS Friendship. Oh yeah, just gals being pals, my friend. Just gals being pals. Nothing sapphic going on over here at all. With the mermaids on the prow. So compositionally, other than that, like, Misfortune is very obvious because, again, with the white sails, she stands out with her black bustier, but not a lot going on compositionally there. It's just a nice little illustration. And, of course, it draws a Misfortune for you. Presumably, you have to have MF in your deck in order for that to actually work, but it's quite cool. And then there's Riptide Rex here, who's a piece of shit. Like, God, 7 cannon barrages dealing 2? To my... 7? 7 of them? I play a Poro deck. This is evil. I can never let a fucking Bilgewater player get to turn 8 now. Ever. I can't, because he's just gonna eat them all. With cannon barrages. Also, rip to anyone who plays Barrier. Barrier is gonna get fucked by this. Anyway... Look at this badass motherfucker. Look at this cool-ass shit. If this guy isn't one of Klet's cousins, Riot is doing something wrong. But, like, this is some Mad Max Fury Road ass. Holy fuck. This is very, very, very cool. Like, oh man. This looks like, you know those toy commercials back in the 80s when everyone was trying to like, do rip-offs of the Transformers and the Ninja Turtles? That's what this looks like. This looks like one of those things that you get like a TV commercial with this like really cool animation with like a tank sharks, tank sharks fight against the evil of the shark, the whale people, blah, blah. New from Mattel, whale shark, tank shark with guns, real shark moving action, fires cannonballs, blah, blah. Like that's what this looks like. Everything about this just suggests ridiculous 80s collectible toy to me. Very Daka. Very good. I love it. Like, this is so funny. So, again, compositionally, everything except the Riptide Rex and his handler is blurry. Like, you can see there's just blur on everything else, which helps focus them in the center of the screen. Then there's the highlighting coming from, like, the light that's falling down on them, as well as just compositionally, they are the largest thing in the entire frame, as they should be. And, yeah, I mean, outside of just this is fucking cool, I don't think there's that much to say about it. Because this is very... But again, if there are shark people in this world, why wasn't the card shark a shark person? Honestly. Anyway, I love this guy. I hope he gets to have voice lines. I want to see this guy have an interaction with Kled. Like, I want to see those run into each other. Which leads us to the Dreadway, which is Gangplank's version of Misfortune's card. Draw Gangplank, double all damage dealt by allies, which again, fuck you if you play this, ever. I hate you. That is a cool ship, though. Like, look at that. I like the use of, like, these metal accents to kind of almost indicate a beard or giant teeth on the ship itself. This is also very, like, over-the-top Pirates of Dark Water, edgy 80s toy commercial kind of thing going on. Again, a sense of scale is provided by having tiny human characters contrasting against the massive scale of the rest of the ship. There's a little bit of framing going on with the sails, that, like, the sails kind of eat the top part of the screen, which means you're free to focus on the victim, which is down here, but more primarily on the giant gaping mouth and these howitzer cannons that Gangplank has somehow managed to install on them. Surely that would just tear the ship apart the moment they fired. And then, like, these cannon slots, I have to imagine they're cannon slots, like, indicating eyes with the glow coming out of them. And again, here we have an interesting, like, we're working with a Dutch angle once again. Very Dutch, like, the horizon line is, like, something like this, I think. Or maybe something along those lines. And the ship itself is contrasting against it by leaning to one side really, really heavily. Which creates a nice visual dynamic in the image, I think. And that is it for the Bilgewater cards. Only took us 2.5 hours. Which means we can now move on to, well, all of the other ones. And this is where I have to get a hold of my card list, because I can't sort cards by set in the actual thing here. So I'm going to have to grab Demacia, only the Bilgewater cards, filter for that. Thank you very much. But first, I'm going to take myself a drink, because, good lord, I'm dry. So, how are you all enjoying the stream? Like, there's still 1,000 of you-ish, so I have to imagine I'm not being too boring. How y'all doing? I need a break for just 1 second, so let's talk to chat instead for a moment. No Ilawi. No, I'm afraid there's no Pike either. I'm sure they'll be added eventually. You have a meeting in 9 hours and you should sleep. Oh, Keechin, go to bed. Honestly, the VOD will be there. It will be there, don't worry. You're enjoying it a lot. I'm Dekayan, yeah. I'm glad you are. It makes it worth it. 1,000 people and not a single dislike? Jesus, that can't last. Favorite champion? Well, the favorite one so far... Like, the favorite new champion that's been added to the game, I think, is probably... I mean, I like Maokai a lot in terms of his mechanic, because it's just so mean. Like, you just eat the enemy's deck. But in terms of the artwork, that's a little bit tougher. I feel like it's probably going to be Vi, because I just love that she's running on a wall and smashing an entire alley's worth of buildings in order to do her work, because fuck Piltover. Probably going to be Vi. Next Bilgewater champion is Tahm Kench. Are we sure about that? Do we know that? I hope so. Told a friend of mine you were streaming the cards. He screamed when he saw you were over 2 hours. Oh, well, poor guy. I hope it didn't startle him. Ah, 8 dislikes. Yeah, I thought so. I figured. Let's see. Vi is level 2, Nectar 2 is wrong. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. How can you play this game? You just download it from the Runeterra website. That's pretty easy. It's been leaked. Yeah, I know Targon is the next region. That's pretty much confirmed by the leaks. I didn't remember that Tahm Kench had voice lines. Oh, yeah, he does! Is Misfortune bisexual because of the interactions? I think she's either bi or lesbian, yeah. Bum, 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 bum. Is there Kled? No, no Kled, unfortunately. Am I excited for the big summer event that Riot teased? No. Not as, like, I don't know what's in it, so I don't know what to be excited for, as such. Unless they lore for Shurima would be nice. Like, what's happening with Azir? Be good to have an update. I'm pretty sure they're going to be adding... after Targon, they're going to be adding Shurima. I'm going to predict that. Because, like, that... I'm pretty sure they will be. Did any cards push new lore? I think a few of them do. I think there's a little bit of new lore being pushed with some of the new cards. But I think Necrit is probably going to have a much more cohesive breakdown of all of it. Will they ever do Bandle City? No. I don't think Bandle City will ever be added to Legends of Runeterra because Yordles in Legends of Runeterra are everywhere. And I don't think it would make sense to have a specific Yordle region. I don't think they'll add Bandle City. I really don't. Maybe, but I don't think so. Ishtal will probably happen as well, but I think, like, I'm almost 100% convinced that it's going to be Targon and then Shurima. Like, that's my prediction. Yone as the next champion. No, Yone is not going to be the next champion. That's been confirmed many, many times that he is dead, and he's going to stay dead. So unless they're pulling a Senna on us, no, I don't think so. A Void. Yeah, the Void will probably be the last one, I think, because the Void is so poorly realized. Like, in the lore, we know so little about it. And the Void is also split. Like, we have the Void in the Freljord is very different than the Void in Shurima, which is very different than the Void in the Deep Sea. So I don't know when the Void is gonna be coming up. Like, if anything, they would do it like as a Ikathia part of Shurima, with like you have some Void creatures, like you get Kaisa perhaps from the Void in Shurima, something like that, or a Void expansion where every region gets Void cards, but it's not a whole region all on its own. Something along those lines, I think. Okay, let me take another drink, and let's move on with the new cards for Demacia. That shouldn't take too long. So, let me just get up my list of cards. Right. We'll start with Quinn, obviously. So, many of the same tricks we've talked about already in terms of like using bright colors and highlighting just with like bright light falling on the character in order to make them stand out from their environment. Also, a little bit of framing where you can see like most of the trees and stuff in the background don't really, like, you don't see any trees like in the background of Quinn herself, or indeed in the background of Valor. They don't really overlap with it. We get this very low angle looking up at her, and again with a Dutch angle, which again I think is to make space for Valor in the composition, which doesn't really add very much. It's dynamic, I guess. But Quinn herself is highlighted against the bright blue sky, where she has these dark Demacian colors instead, and then like the gold of her helmet. She's also had a little bit of a character update. Like there's a little, it's not like a full visual update of the character, but she has a slightly different aesthetic going on. For one thing, they've removed some of the bulk in her base design in League of Legends. She has a lot more bulk around her hips and her waist. Which they have removed here in order to make her look a little bit lighter, I think. The claws on her shoes are spurs. Birds have them on the backs of their legs. Chickens, for example, roosters will have really big spurs. They use them to fight with. They've removed some bulk from her to make her look a little bit lighter and more agile, whereas Quinn in the base game is kind of bulky in a lot of ways, which has always been kind of... It has always conflicted a little bit with her whole, she's a light scout character who, like, travels over mountains and stuff, that she had so much bulk on her. So it's a nice change that they removed some of that, I think. Yeah, like, the main splash art of Quinn is more about her than Valor. Like, Valor is there, and she's kind of pointing him in a particular direction, and he's about to take off, but it's mostly about Quinn herself. Whereas her leveled up version is not about her at all, really. Like, she's there, and when you look at the card art, she's the one who's centered, but when you look at the full art, Valor is the main character here. Absolutely the main character. First of all, he's in focus, which Quinn isn't. And also, here you can see a really clear demonstration, because normally Quinn and Valor have the same color. Like, Quinn's blue cloak is the same color as Valor's feathering. But here you can see they've desaturated the cloak a lot in order to make Valor the most colorful thing in the image that really stands out. And that's, again, that little compositional trick we've talked about many times before, with using bright light and really eye-catching color in order to control where people look at the image. And also, a really nice little detail is not just like this motion blur. This is like a simple motion blur Photoshop filter, I think, that's been applied out here. But if you look at the grass down here, you can see they've painted these speed streaks, like literally directly painted them into the grass texture. And that looks really, really good. And I kind of wish they'd done that for all of the image instead of using these filter effects. But it looks really, really cool. So you get a great sense of speed. Like, you get a great sense of Valor, like, taking off and flying super fast. One thing that does get me a little bit, though, is... Take a look at Valor here, his face. With the beak, with the little extra, like, hook on it. And, like, the feathers that kind of almost look like a little bit of a hairstyle. And then Valor here. This feels like it was very, very heavily referenced from a picture of a real eagle. And it kind of... He looks too much like just a normal-ass bird. And he kind of lacks a little bit of that fantasy quality that he kind of has in the original... Let me see if I can find Quinn's original splash art. Okay, let me see if I can get that on screen for a second. Do I have a window capture? Just a moment. This is going to take me a sec. Firefox, thank you. There we go. So take a look at Valor here. Right? You can see that very hooked beak, like this, those streaking feathers that are distinctly designed to like emulate almost a hairstyle. He's kind of anime-ish. And then take a look at him compared to just a bird here. So that to me is a little bit like, I would like him to be more of specifically like an actual fantasy bird rather than just some random normal bird. And also, as someone is pointing out in chat, yeah, he looks a little bit small in this picture when he's supposed to be like a huge bird. I feel like probably it's the wingspan that's a bit too... Like, I feel like this was very heavily referenced from a real bird, where it should probably have been more fantasy distorted with a much longer wingspan and, like, more of a Valor-like face. Because even here, like, look at that. All of a sudden, much more of a fantasy bird aesthetic on his head. Feels much less referenced from the art of a real bird, which like, but yeah, that's probably like, birds are hard. I spent some time trying to learn to illustrate birds of prey, and they are really difficult. So I don't blame the artist for using reference really heavily if that's what they did. But I prefer this version of him. Like, this looks more like the Valor I know from the game. And again, same stuff, like Valor has these really dark, saturated colors, and most of the background doesn't. And that's what makes him stand out, as well as him just dominating the whole composition by taking up so much space in it. And I like the sense of scale here. Like, I like the sense of, like, flying high above this vast, impressive, mountainous landscape. You have this really floating feeling in this image, like you're gliding along next to him, which I think is really nice. That's a good mood for the picture to have. Hey, good job to Kyan. Would have loved to see more of Miss Fortune's crew. Yeah, same for me, Patrick. It would be nice if Miss Fortune had more cards specifically with her crew members. Right, next one. Let me look at the card list. That would be the Green Fang Warden, who is down here somewhere. Just gonna buy a couple of those for myself, because I need that for one of my decks, I think, because he has the Barrier and the Scout. So, Green Fang Warden, same general compositional tricks that we've talked about before. The trees are kind of giving a little, not that much of a frame, but it does create a little bit of a space for him and his dog to occupy. But the thing I really like about this image, again, is the storytelling, that probably a Noxian, going by the design of the arrow, is shooting at this guy, and then his dog catches it in mid-flight, saving him. Like this like master and his pet dynamic thing going on. I think that's really nice. That's a nice little bit of visual storytelling that instantly tells you, like, of the partnership between the man and the animal, which is quite well done. Yeah, like I said, try hard. I have 500 wildcards because Riot, like I say, like the disclosure says, they basically gave me as many wildcards as I need to buy every single card in the game. Riot were kind enough to reach out and do that for me, which is why the disclosure is right there on screen for you. It's not because I've played 10 billion games. I like the design of the dog, because, again, here's where, like, the thing that was kind of missing with Valor was a little bit more of a mix of, like, fantasy and real-world animal. And here you have this shaggy sheepdog-looking thing, but then you look at the anatomy of its mouth, and, like, the paws with these long claws, and this slightly uncanny anatomy, and you get much more of a sense of, yeah, it's a dog-ish thing. It's not literally a dog, it's a dog-ish kind of thing. Which I like. Like, I like that as a design sensibility. And again, bright light used to highlight the face of the main character, used to highlight the dog as well, making them stand out from the background, etc., etc. Saturated colors, drawing your attention. Let's see, next one in Demacia would be the Loyal Badger Bear. So this one looks almost more Ionian to me at first. Like, the first time I saw it, I was like, that looks more like an Ionian kind of card. And part of the reason why is because you have this colorful, lavish foliage. That's the word I'm looking for. Foliage. You have this colorful, lavish foliage in the background, which is generally characteristic of a lot of the Ionian cards. And then the fact that you have this Yordle and an animal on the thing, like, it's more nature imagery, where Demacia tends more towards knightly imagery, like knights and, like, people on steeds and swords and armor and stuff like that. So immediately it looked a little bit more Ionian in its aesthetic to me. But leaving that aside for the moment, this guy looks cool, doesn't he? Like, grizzled Yordle scout warrior. Isn't it weird that there are Yordles in the Demacian military, by the way? Like, I know about Poppy, but she's like a wandering someone, like, wanders around Demacia looking for a hero, not someone who's part of the Demacian armed forces. Like, how did he train? How did no one realize? Anyway, same techniques we've talked about before. The framing is done by the tree that they're both sitting in. Like, this tree trunk here creates this ledge, this space for them, separate from, like, the vast and windswept background back here. Bright light highlights both the characters and highlights the similar. I like the visual affinity. That's what it's called, by the way, when you have characters where, like, they have traits that match each other. Like, when you say that a pet looks like their owner, that kind of thing, that's visual affinity in like visual design language. And there's visual affinity between these two characters. They have the same expression, but they also have the same eyebrows. They have, like, the same giant mustache coming off their very similar looking noses, which creates a pleasing symmetry between the two of them. It has the interesting side effect of making the badger bear seem sentient somehow to me, which I don't know how you would solve that necessarily, but it creates a really nice visual dynamic partnership between the two of them. Like, you get that they're on the same wavelength because they look the same. Oh, hey, it's true what they say, pets look like their owners. Yes, true. Thank you, chat, for pointing out that they already pointed that out. Okay, next one would be the Great Horn Companion. And that's a 5 cost, so that's down. Here he is. So, again, the use of light and color to designate a main character in a piece. Because the main subject of this piece, once again, is not the ranger themselves, but their mount, their companion. And the way that we know that is because the whole composition revolves around them. You can see the framing of, like, the curvature of this hill rolling down, leading into the trunks of these trees right here, creates this space that the Great Horn completely occupies. And then it's highlighted with, like, the bright light and the bright colors on its head right there, so that becomes designated as the main character. And the ranger themselves, despite also being in direct sunlight, are much more drab and much less highlighted than their companion is. Basic compositional technique used to high efficiency. And I like the character design of this thing, that it has the hind legs of a horse, but then, like, the front of it is kind of like an elk of some kind, or a moose. But it's a moose with, like, really sharp horns that looks really aggressive and dangerous. And then it has this, like, mottling on the front legs that almost looks like, what are they called, an okapi. which again is that chimera creature design that I really like in League of Legends. I like that a lot more than just having normal-ass sharks hanging out with Nautilus, to have this chimera aesthetic in the creature design. And also, again, the visual storytelling here is pretty good. We have this ranger character who's clearly scouting out a battlefield of some kind, where Demacia has suffered some kind of defeat, as you can tell by the discarded Demacian helmet lying in the environment. And then it's Guinevere Elmheart, I think, is the next one. Yeah, she's the last one, too, of Demacia. So this is the same character that we see in the companion. Like, this is her, but off her mount. Clearly in some kind of... She's kind of fleeing, kind of looking around pensively from perhaps a failed battle or something. And here, either she's riding into the battle that Demacia loses, or she's coming back for revenge. Either way... Many of the same compositional tricks again. Here you can see how light is used to occlude, to basically de-emphasize the characters that are following behind her, but then the light that falls on her and her companion, this bright golden light of victory, which Demacian cards, lots of cards have this exact aesthetic, like with golden light of victory leading characters to glory. You can see it here, especially like with the golden light behind her, highlighting this angel Valkyrie person as she charges into the hordes of the undead. That's very much the same thing that's going on here, with the light itself acting as a vanishing point for the perspective of the piece, but also as like the light of Demacian victory charging her onwards to battle. Basically, it's that scene from Two Towers where Gandalf charges in with all the riders and the sun at their backs. It's that kind of aesthetic. And again, the main character of the piece is Guinevere herself, but because the companion creature is also fairly highlighted, you get this sense of partnership between them. Like that there is this connection visually that emphasizes their connection in terms of the storytelling. And that's it for Demacia, I think, which means we can move on to the Freljord. We're just going to do these in order, pretty much. And talk about Sejuani. Now, I really, really, really like Sejuani's card, because her base splash has kind of the same energy in some ways as Gangplank's leveled up splash. Like this thing, where you have this one character, and then behind them you see the reason to fear them. Like this is why they're terrifying, right? That kind of feeling and sensation. With Sejuani, it's just delivered in terms of like, oh yeah, she's riding the big boar, and she's got her mace out and the flail and stuff. But the reason why you're scared of Sejuani, like really fucking scared of her, is that she's got all of this behind her. She rides in front of that. All of that follows wherever she goes. That's why she's terrifying. And that's why that's what I really like, is that the composition is so minimalist. Like there's nothing here. There's just this bright, like this endless plain of snow. No details, no trees, no rocks, no anything. Just this white blank plain of snow. A War Mother and her host. That's a really powerful composition. Like this works really well. And again, colors here are being used to highlight Sejuani, especially her weapons made of true ice, and her true ice helmet as well, which must be murder on a headache to wear that thing. Drawing your attention to her without the use, like we've talked so much about light and highlighting, right? That's not used here at all. There's no highlighting, there's no bright edge lighting, there's no sunlight coming down from up top. She has the same lighting and color aesthetic pretty much as the rest of her war host, except those bright blue magical weapons that she's wielding, highlighting her as something to be feared. Like this is one of the best cards in the set entirely. And then we get to the second one. This is much more like in the style of the rest of Legends of Runeterra. Like the thing that makes the Sejuani base card stand out so much is like there just aren't any other cards in the game that really have this sparse, dark, moody aesthetic to them. Most of them have some kind of comedy or action or lightheartedness or like some sense of cartoonish fun. Even like the deep water, like the deep sea Freljord creatures had a little bit of that sense of fun to them, a little bit of that sense of that colorfulness to them. Whereas, like, Sejuani's base is so... There's only one color in it, and it's this bright blue. Everything else is just, like, drab and dour. And then we get to the second one when she's leveled up, and it's much more traditional Legends of Runeterra. It's much more, here's an action scene of her riding into the fray, and the battle is being joined, and, like, action is happening. We have, like, these bright pink colors of, like, the sunset outlining her behind her, and we have, like, snow falling everywhere. Much more energy and action in that one, where the other one is so quiet. It's scary. Yeah, Deep Sea Bilgewater, not Freljord. So, again, framing. Sejuani here is framed mostly by her opponents. Like, you have the hair and the body of this character in the foreground, then the shield of this person who she's about to knock down, then the body of this warrior that she's charging towards. All of that creating this space right here for her to occupy as the dominant force that blasts everything else around her away, which emphasizes her power as a character and her power as a warrior. And then her pose does a good bit of visual storytelling, because Sejuani isn't just fighting here. She's not just, like, knocking people down left and right. She's also commanding. You can see that, like, that outstretched finger, like, warriors to that side. That kind of aesthetic with her is that she's charging into battle, but she's also commanding the battle. She's in control of the battle. She's giving orders. And really effective use of, like, these spears and arrows that are flying to create, like, they're basically speed lines. Like, they're basically speed lines in the image, creating this sense of speed as she charges forward on Bristle into the fray. And again, the bright blue colors of her True Ice implements are doing a good job of, like, highlighting her a little bit in contrast to the environment, but then also there's this lovely pink lighting in the background that she's being contrasted against, being much more blue and brown in her aesthetic. Okay, next Freljord card would be... probably the Ruthless Raider. Oh, you're tough and you have Overwhelm? Thank you very much. Oh, that's cool, isn't it? That's nice. And terrifying, but nice. She could use a little bit more of a waste, like so many other cards in Legends of Runeterra, but she has enough that I believe... Like, this is the thing, is, like, I don't necessarily want the characters to be realistic. I don't necessarily want them to have realistic... Like, because, like, if you wanted to give this character a realistic waist size, then she would be built like a fucking tree trunk, because that's the kind of body shape that you have when you're a warrior who fights bears on a mountain. Like, that, you have this hugely powerfully developed core set of muscles. I don't necessarily want them to be realistic, but I just want to be able to believe that there are abs enough in there and enough organs to keep her alive and keep her powerful. Anyway, I see people are asking to be stepped on again, or at least thinking it. So, same compositional ideas that we got already. Like, you can see the debris of the destruction that she's causing. You can, if you pay attention, you can see this curve. Like this round, almost circular shape that's being cleaved by this giant war pick that she's wielding. Especially here. That creates a little bit of, like, a circular framing space for her to occupy. Which like, helps ground the composition somewhat. And then there's just the fact that she's big in the image. Like, she's fully 2/3 of the image is, like, occupied by her space, which makes her stand out. And then the bright flame of the fire that's been set on the village in the background also does a good job of framing her out with contrast, doing that, like, this gorgeous edge lighting up around her face especially. Like, that right there, that's really freaking cool. And it makes her look terrifying when you look at her too long. I don't know what's up with the shield, like with the pig's nose on it. I guess that's a symbol that, like, she's a Winter's Claw, so I guess they take the symbol of the boar as a sign of power for them, which is interesting. I didn't actually know that.